Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Okay, I'm going to say this now. You're about to enter a guilt-free zone. There's no guilt here. There's no judgment. Guilt-free. Hear me? Okay. Next question. Actually, that wasn't a question, but here's a question. Do you ever take the time for yourself? Like quality time to care about yourself? Probably not as much as you should because you probably feel guilty. We're going to dig into that today. Self-care, self-love, boundaries to make sure you get that done. Annie Baker Atwood is an amazing Reiki practitioner, and she's going to help us along with that. Annie, how are you doing today?
I am doing really, really well, and this is such a fantastic topic.
I love it. So I'm gonna throw it to you right now. What did you do so far today that could come under the category of self-care, self-love?
Sitting in my rocking chair.
Okay, that's fine.
It's different for every person.
Yeah.
What feels good, and a lot of people use self-care and self-love interchangeably, but they're actually two very different concepts. There are a lot of people who practice a lot of self-care. You know, they take time to go get their hair done, their nails done, toes, but they don't always have self-love. And so I really, with my clients, differentiate between the two to make sure that it's understood that self-care are actions and self-love is a feeling. Self-love is an inside job. Nobody can do that for you. And practicing self-care is a fantastic way of taking care of yourself. But true self-love is where you just say, this is such a delicious place to be. And you're just really comfortable in your body. And when you have that, people are attracted to it. You're a smiley person and you just feel really good with who you are. And there are some physically very beautiful women who haven't quite owned who they are. And they seek a lot of validation through different modalities, but they really aren't so sure about who they are. And part of Reiki is making those two parts match and having someone feel really integrated with their feelings, with their kind of where they are, their place in the world. And that's one of my favorite parts about Reiki, is being able to facilitate that.
See, I didn't know that that was possible on the self-love side. Experiencing Reiki before, not a lot, but enough to know that, whoa, this is powerful and it's a game changer. Didn't know that it could help you with self-love. And to your point, Annie, so many people, women, guys, whatever, will look for other things to validate themselves, getting into bad relationships, doing things that just are, I could go on and on. I know these people, and I'm not judging them.
Right.
It's obvious.
I do not judge at all. And the not judging is where the boundaries come in.
Well, that's the next topic. Like I'll give you an example. I know somebody that has worn t-shirts to the gym, and I know them fairly well, and they're just screaming for attention. Like somebody, I won't tell you what they all said, but one said, "I'm a ray of blanking, insert F word, sunshine." And it's just like waiting for somebody to say, "Oh yeah, I like that shirt." But it's somebody that doesn't love themselves and they're reaching out. And I think the feeling of self-love, and I'm still working on it myself, but it's that feeling of, I guess, almost walking on a cloud. Like, yeah, it's, you know what it is? It's high on yourself. You have this high on yourself.
It is. And so many children are taught not to be full of themselves.
Mm.
Who do you think you are? Do you think you're better than somebody else?
Yeah.
When they just exude confidence, and people want to take them down a peg. And so a lot of times, very exuberant personalities are squashed down. My kindergarten report card said, Anne is a good little decision maker and she knows where she's at. And I
Ah,
thought, as a teacher, for a teacher to write that, I was the one commanding a lot of attention.
at kindergarten. Yes.
In kindergarten, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's not always accepted. And so you get squashed down and squashed down because
Culturally, it's a culturally thing.
it's a cultural
Yes.
thing.
Yeah. That
And
it is.
so it's that idea that you're comfortable in your body is not supported by the glossy magazines. They want you to be beautiful on the outside, 21 ways to wear makeup. And it's really interesting how it's an outside job. And what Reiki does is it makes you confident on the inside. And that's, I don't know, after my divorce, I started dating again. And I never worried about it because I would go into these, blind dates, whatever they were, first dates, with the attitude of, I like me. Let's see if our energy hits it off.
Mhm.
And even if our energy didn't hit it off, the men were always really happy to spend that time with me because they're like, wow, you know what? We're not going to continue dating, but I really had a great time. That was just really fun. And that's what having self love is. And I tell people all the time, I'm practicing self care by not making a decision, which,
Hmm.
mm,
I got to think about that for a second. I got to process that. Practicing self-care by not making a decision.
mhm.
How do you mean that?
There's a lot of online businesses for healthcare products or whatever. And so I get approached a lot with, wouldn't you like to be part of this? I think of them as pyramid schemes. I'm sure they're not. But, if you sell X amount of products, you could become the next agent. And I smile and I, say, I'm practicing self care by not making a decision right now because they want to pressure you.
Yep.
And people have the same reaction that you did. They're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I got to think about that.
I gotta think about
I
that.
get it. I get it now.
Yeah. And it's really setting up some space so that you can decide, is this the best thing for me? I know it works very well for them or they wouldn't be approaching, but is it the right thing for me? And I decided very early on that one thing that was going to set me apart in the Reiki business, and there's a lot of us out there, was I'm not going to try to sell you anything. I'm not going to try to tell you, oh, if you use this skincare product or if you use these vitamins, all is well. I'm like, nope, that's totally separate. I'm just going to provide you with an amazing strengthening experience and let you do whatever's working.
But
Or
you already sold me on the Reiki thing
yes,
based on what we just talked about, because that is the game changer, the self-love and self-care and the boundaries. And I didn't put the two and two, connect the dots together about Reiki helping you with that, but it makes perfect sense. And on the self-love side of things, everybody's on a journey. So sometimes you start out lacking confidence, but along the way, you start building that up. Takes time.
It does.
It's like, the dating thing. Somebody in the beginning might say, overthink it. Like, what should I wear? Like, what am I going to, we're just meeting for coffee. But then you get to the point, I'm going to wear this. That's fine. I'm just coffee. Who cares? This is me.
This
I'm
is
comfortable
me.
in my skin. That's it. Exactly. Yeah. But sometimes it takes time to get there. So a question about self-care.
Mhm.
Can you ever overdo it? Can you get to the point where, yeah, I'm taking another vacation? You know what? I am going for another massage. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. Can you overdo it?
Yes and no. That sounds like a diversionary tactic
Hmm.
where you're seeking a way to not address what's going on inside. And that happens a lot.
Yeah.
People will find a way to interrupt a conversation with themselves by, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. And then it becomes I'm so busy, I must be important
Hmm.
type of, and it doesn't matter what's making you busy, whether it's constant appointments or a lot of people will overdo it with volunteering because then they get to say, oh, I did all this volunteering, which of course is really important, but the person isn't doing it to be important. They're doing it so that they can complain about it, about how busy they always are. And I say, my superpower is daydreaming. I am perfectly happy to sit still and not do anything. And that is upsetting for some people. They want to say, come on, you have to go do something. I say, no, I'm absorbing. I took a really interesting class this weekend, and I'm still putting all the pieces together.
Hmm.
And so, similar to you can overtrain your body physically, and that's why rest-based training is super important. I did a lot of running, and you need your rest days after a long run. And so, with if you train for a marathon, your weekly runs add up to your long run. And then you really need to rest and let those muscles reintegrate. And people forget that with education. The reason children need to play is they need to take all those pieces that they've been taught, try them out, and integrate them so that they have those as tools. And again, with Reiki, I can do a lot of that and line things up for you so that those tools are available more quickly. And it's really cool.
Yeah.
Reiki is just a really cool thing.
I want to get on your training schedule and do nothing because
Yes.
I think I feel guilty sometimes doing nothing, but once you start, you realize it. Like I just started, this is ridiculous, but I'll share at my life and my age. I went for a walk.
Yes.
Yesterday morning, I was going to go to the gym. I'm like, just not feeling it. It's Monday. Blah. So I took the dog and I just walked around.
Mhm.
And then I was like, that's pretty good. So what did I do today? Took the dog.
Went for a
It's
walk.
good. And it was just nothing, but it was something.
It's,
And something
yeah.
big, but you don't realize it until you do it. And I'm like, never get to experience just, 7:30 in the morning in peacefulness and, just walking and just observing. And
Yes.
because life is that treadmill, blah, 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 rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. You're just, moving on, doing, and you don't really know until you know. And which is why we're talking about all this today, because it's probably one of the most important things you can do in life, self-care, self-love. Let's go to the boundary part now.
Ooh,
Putting up
yes.
boundaries so you can, I assume, so you can get those other things done.
I have a very different approach to boundaries.
Okay.
A lot of people say, oh, a boundary is a line in the sand. And, I have this big boundary around me. You can't cross my boundaries. And they get kind of aggressive about it. And I use the analogy that a boundary is more like a nest that snuggles you so you can look out in the world and observe all that is good, than a cage where you're inside and no one's going to cross this part, because a cage is people on the outside and something on the inside.
I'm fascinated at, and this is it's simple, but we don't look at it that way. Boundaries are, put these walls up here, like bowling when you're a kid and they put the the bumpers up.
I still do it.
Got the bumpers, where you're taking it from a different look, and it's more of a a protective spot. This is this is where I am, and I'm not going to go outside this little area, as opposed to stopping the things from coming in.
Yes. Yes. And part of the boundary or the nest is you can invite somebody in. And then if they're not having, proper nest rules, you can ask them to leave. And the students in my class loved making little forts. And I had a lot of old scarves from my mom, and they would, create these forts around their desk or between things. And then they would climb under their desk completely in a fort and, read or color or whatever. And it was their rules, their little space that they felt so supported and comfortable and able to just be themselves.
Wow.
And it was really helpful for me to say, that's how you establish your boundaries, is you create the perfect place, the perfect nest for you. And if you can do that first physically, and then it becomes emotionally. And I had a little girl ask me one time, she said, why are our boundaries important? And I said, oh, so, other people's energy doesn't fill you up. She goes, right, because then they would be filled with your awesome and you would be filled with their ick. And that's not good. I said, exactly.
Wow.
I want to keep my awesome.
Yeah.
I will help share my awesome, but I don't want to be filled with their ick.
And that's really, when you talk about energy healing, it's putting the good stuff in and get rid of the ick stuff, making that go out and away.
Yeah. And I draw it out. And I mean, I do that with my hand because I can gather up the energy that's feeling ick and just pull it out. And
It's funny how we all have different perspectives, because Annie, when you talked about getting underneath the desk and that safe spot, I look at it in a different way. When I was a kid, when we went under the desk, it was the drill for the nuclear war. I don't know if you remember doing that. If they did
yeah.
Did they do that? Or in the hallway, you crouch down. It was, I probably was in first, second grade. I just remember which hallway it was in which school, and that's where it would have been. But it's funny, like that comes into my head. I don't even think of it as a desk and it is a safe spot, if they're building their nest underneath the desk.
Yeah. Yeah. And they would do it with the tables, and sometimes they move all the tables. I was a very flexible teacher when it came to moving furniture. The children loved it. And so they could put their desks in a long row and then create like little habitat tunnels, and they would crawl through them. I was probably very difficult to manage from the administration part of it, but we had a great time in room.
Wow. Yeah, because you encourage their imagination, you encourage their growth in areas that are important, where it's sometimes overlooked, when kids are in school. So tell me, in terms of you doing Reiki and helping somebody on their journey who realizes that I need to I'm at the point where I know I need to love myself, but I feel guilty or I can't or I have issues with that. Even taking the time for self-care, I'm guilty of that. I didn't do it for so many years. Made a
I didn't
mistake.
either.
Made a mistake.
Yeah, I didn't either. And I got burned out.
Ulcer. Hello. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And just um, the anxiety and my neck was always like really tight,
Mm.
and I just wasn't smiling. And I'm a smiley person. And so all of the stress and doing things, and I was looking, since I just moved, I get to, unearth some things. And it was a list. I always had to have a list. I always had to have a list. And I realized by having a list, it meant I was really important because I was going to do everything on that list. And I realized how controlling that was when on my list it said make big fuss over husband. It's like, wow, I had to write that down.
You actually wrote that down?
I did.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a lot more relaxed
Mm-hmm.
now. But at the time, I was so scheduled that any interruption to that schedule posed as a threat.
Or just threw you into a different kind of vortex where you're like, wait, no.
Yeah. And so it was always hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. The 3 children, get them in the car, do this, do that. And it wasn't fun. It just wasn't fun.
Yeah.
And always having to, be on the clock, and, even 1 minute was going to ruin everything.
But
Like, wow.
you thought that was the way it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you don't know otherwise. And then, you also have that vision of, the wife, the husband, the big house, the kids, everything's great, dog running through I got to keep this going. This is the way it's supposed to be. So I got to keep working overtime and make sure that everybody's
Looks
happy.
good from the outside.
Everybody's happy. You got to make sure. Yeah. And then, you derail and you realize, yeah, I'm going to ask you a personal question. You don't have to answer. What astrological sign are you?
Leo.
Okay. I'm not the expert here, but I was kind of feeling something, or Virgo, because I'm a Virgo, and the list and the whole but Leo is close to Virgo in many regards, since you could
Yes.
be on a yeah.
It's the kind of the low road of Leo, to try to control everything so you can always be the center of attention.
Yeah.
And if you're the organizer, then you get to say, what's going to happen. I'm going to do this. Everybody's going to do this. Everybody's going to fall in line perfectly. And then you kind of realize that maybe they're towing the line because they don't want to, upset mommy, or
Mm.
they don't want to see somebody fall apart. But there was a lot of rigidity in how I was living.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's really a relief to not do that anymore, and to just say, okay, I'm going to embrace not being conventional.
I don't know if I share this with you, and I feel like every time I'm on a podcast, I say this, but it embodies everything that we talk about, everybody talks about. And these are words that somebody told me about a year and a half ago in a text, somebody very, very spiritual, insightful, never forgot it. Habit doesn't equal happiness.
Yes.
So we're doing our lives and it seems like it's okay because we've got that schedule and that rhythm and, pick the kids up and drop them off and do this, go back to work, blah, 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 blah. But in the end, are you really happy? You might think you are. So it's time for a little self-love. Take that walk with the dog, whatever it might be, reflect on it and think about it. And then maybe have a Reiki session. So maybe have some more clarity.
Yeah. And as you mentioned last time, Reiki finds what you need to work on, which is an interesting way of looking at it. Like, you may not have known that, your sciatica and your shoulder are actually the same pain points.
Hmm.
A lot of people who have rotator cuff issues will also have sciatica because they're kind of off
Unbalanced.
kilter.
Yeah. Yep.
And, I look at the feet. I look at, are you in alignment, your shoulders over your hips, over your knees, over your ankles? Or are you, pronating your feet? If you look at your sneakers, you can see where the wear is in the heel. And knowing that means your ankles aren't aligned. And so if something's not aligned, you're working overtime to compensate
Yep.
for that. And that is the same with your energy centers, which we call chakras. But if one isn't really working well, you're going to compensate for it somewhere else. And that leads to burnout.
And you know what? What you just said, Annie, kind of translates to life in general. Because if this is not right, you're making up for it over here. But if you're not in a balance, everything is just not right.
Yeah, it's finding your inner balance helps tremendously with how you approach the world. I know gratitude is something that it's a word that is often talked about, gratitude and forgiveness. I have different things to say about that as well.
Oh, we can. Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, we're literally over.
That'll be our next time. Gratitude
Oh.
and forgiveness.
Yeah, I really want to hear your thoughts on forgiveness because I hear this, I hear that.
It's like dryer lint.
Say it again.
It's like dryer lint. That dryer lint thing?
Oh, I know.
You have to clear it every day or every wash session. Otherwise, it blocks you. And we know that certain things go through the dryer and they create a lot of dryer lint. And some things go through the dryer and they don't create a lot of dryer lint. And so just knowing if it's going to be a heavy dryer lint activity or experience with somebody helps you know how to navigate that.
But, and I don't think you don't need to answer, should you forgive them?
It's not about them. It's about you.
Doing it for you, not for them.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Correct. And you're not condoning the behavior.
I think we don't have time to go down this rabbit hole, but we need to. And I think that's where the block comes in, where you think that if you do forgive, you're giving up something and giving into them and their behavior and what they did,
Correct.
where you don't even want to give an inch. Like
Correct. And that's the boundary.
And that's all right. Press pause. Yeah, very relatable. And Annie, you have just a wonderful way, aside from your amazing energy, just a wonderful way of explaining things and making it clear and just relatable.
It helps. It just helps to think about some things a little differently and be able to say, I hadn't thought of that. And now I can.
Annie Reiki'd herself before we got together. I know it.
I did with my tuning fork.
Well, it shows. It shows. There you go.
This is how I clean my energy, the room energy. Some people use smudging, but that's not a good thing in a school.
Point taken, and the jury's still out. We could talk about sage. We could talk about Palo Santo. I have Palo Santo spray right over there. Is the spray the same thing as burning the wood? I don't know. Don't answer. We'll figure that out sometime. I just want to tell everybody, redbootsreiki.com is your website. redbootsreiki.com. Any questions, any thoughts? If you just want to share something or looking to really change your life with a Reiki session, reach out to Annie. Yeah, very powerful stuff. And great talking with you today.
Great talking. Thank you.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.